1939 marked a turning point in human history. It was a year that would see the world plunged into a conflict of unimaginable scale and devastation. The events that unfolded would shape the geopolitical landscape for decades to come. The world watched as a conflict of unprecedented scale erupted, engulfing nations and continents in its wake. Borders were redrawn, alliances were tested, and the very fabric of society was torn apart by the relentless march of war. World War II, a global conflagration, would forever alter the course of the 20th century and leave an indelible mark on generations to come. Leaders from across the globe were thrust into the spotlight, making decisions that would impact millions of lives. From the bustling cities of Europe to the remote islands of the Pacific, the war's reach extended far and wide. No corner of the globe was left untouched by the conflict, as battles raged on land, sea, and air. Millions of soldiers and civilians alike were caught in the crossfire, their lives irrevocably changed by the horrors they witnessed. Families were torn apart, homes were destroyed, and entire communities were uprooted as the war machine rolled on. Amidst the chaos and destruction, stories of courage, resilience, and the indomitable spirit of humanity also emerged. Acts of heroism and selflessness shone through the darkness, offering glimmers of hope in the bleakest of times. World War II was a complex and multifaceted conflict driven by a confluence of political, economic, and ideological factors. Nations were drawn into the fray for a myriad of reasons, each with its own motivations and objectives. The seeds of war were sown in the aftermath of World War I, as the Treaty of Versailles imposed harsh penalties on Germany, fueling resentment and instability in Europe. The economic and political turmoil of the interwar years created a fertile ground for the rise of extremist ideologies. As the world grappled with the devastating effects of the Great Depression, extremist ideologies like Nazism and Japanese imperialism gained traction, promising a return to greatness and exploiting nationalist sentiments. These movements capitalized on the widespread discontent and desperation of the time. The stage was set for a global confrontation that would test the very limits of human endurance. As nations mobilized for war, the world held its breath, bracing for the storm that was about to be unleashed. The shadow of war loomed large, casting a pall over the hopes and dreams of millions. Seeds of conflict, the path to global war. The journey to the most devastating conflict in human history was not a sudden plunge, but a gradual descent, marked by a series of critical events and decisions that collectively led the world to the brink of war. The road to World War II was paved with missed opportunities and a collective failure to address the underlying tensions that simmered beneath the surface of international relations. Diplomatic efforts, though numerous, often fell short of resolving the deep-seated issues that plagued the interwar period. The Treaty of Versailles, intended to ensure lasting peace after World War I, instead sowed the seeds of resentment and instability. The harsh terms imposed on Germany, including significant territorial losses and crippling reparations, created a sense of humiliation and economic despair among the German populace. Germany, burdened by crippling war reparations and territorial losses, became fertile ground for extremist ideologies. The economic hardship of the 1920s, exacerbated by the Great Depression, led to widespread unemployment and social unrest, creating a volatile environment ripe for radical political movements. The Nazi Party, led by the charismatic but ruthless Adolf Hitler, exploited economic hardship and national humiliation to gain popular support. Hitler's promises of economic revival, national rejuvenation, and the restoration of German pride resonated deeply with a disillusioned and desperate populace. Meanwhile, in Japan, militaristic leaders driven by expansionist ambitions and a desire for raw materials embarked on a path of aggression in Asia. The Japanese military sought to secure resources and territory to fuel their growing industrial economy, leading to invasions and occupations in China and other parts of Asia. The League of Nations, weakened by internal divisions and a lack of enforcement power, proved unable to effectively address these growing threats to peace. Despite its noble intentions, the League's inability to take decisive action against aggressor nations highlighted its fundamental weaknesses. As tensions escalated, a series of events further propelled the world towards the brink of war. The aggressive actions of Germany, Italy, and Japan, coupled with the failure of the international community to respond effectively, created a climate of fear and uncertainty. The failure of the appeasement policy, exemplified by the Munich Agreement, only emboldened Hitler's expansionist ambitions. The agreement, which allowed Nazi Germany to annex the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia, was seen by Hitler as a sign of weakness and encouraged further territorial demands. The Nazi-Soviet Pact, a non-aggression pact between Germany and the Soviet Union, shocked the world and set the stage for the outbreak of war. This unexpected alliance between two ideologically opposed regimes allowed Hitler to invade Poland without fear of Soviet intervention, triggering the start of World War II. The pact also demonstrated the lengths to which both dictators would go to achieve their strategic goals, further destabilizing the already fragile international order. Lightning strikes the outbreak of World War II. On September 1st, 1939, the world watched in disbelief as German forces stormed across the Polish border, unleashing the full fury of their blitzkrieg tactic. This lightning-fast invasion, characterized by the coordinated use of tanks, aircraft and infantry, marked the beginning of World War II. Great Britain and France, bound by treaty obligations to Poland, declared war on Germany 2 days later. The fragile peace that had prevailed for 2 decades was shattered, replaced by a conflict that would engulf the globe. The early years of the war were marked by a series of stunning German victories. Poland fell swiftly, followed by Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium and France. The Battle of France, a testament to the effectiveness of German military doctrine, resulted in the collapse of the French Republic and the establishment of a puppet government in Vichy. Great Britain, standing alone against the Nazi war machine, braced itself for a German invasion. The Battle of Britain, a pivotal air campaign fought in the skies above England, showcased the courage and determination of the Royal Air Force, which successfully repelled the Luftwaffe's relentless attacks. A continent in flames, Europe's struggle for survival. The Second World War was not just a conflict of nations, but a cataclysmic struggle that engulfed an entire continent, leaving an indelible mark on history. As the flames of war spread across Europe, the continent became a battleground for the clashing ideologies of democracy, fascism, and communism. The political landscape was dominated by figures like Hitler, Stalin, and Churchill, each representing vastly different visions for the future of Europe and the world. Millions of soldiers and civilians were caught in the crossfire, their lives upended by the relentless advance of armies and the constant threat of aerial bombardment. Cities were reduced to rubble, and the once peaceful countryside became fields of conflict. Families were torn apart, and the very fabric of society was tested to its limits. In the East, the Nazi-Soviet Pact proved to be a temporary alliance of convenience. This agreement, signed in August 1939, allowed both powers to carve up Eastern Europe. But it was always a fragile truce, destined to be shattered. In June 1941, Hitler, seeking to eliminate his communist rival and secure vital resources, launched a surprise attack on the Soviet Union, Operation Barbarossa. This massive invasion force, comprising millions of soldiers, tanks and aircraft, aimed to crush the Soviet Union in a swift and decisive campaign. The invasion, the largest military operation in history, marked the beginning of a brutal 4-year campaign that would claim the lives of millions. The Eastern Front became a theater of immense suffering and destruction, where entire cities were obliterated and the landscape was scarred by relentless combat. The Eastern Front, characterized by its vast scale and unimaginable brutality, became a war of attrition. Both sides suffered staggering losses, and the harsh winters added to the misery of the soldiers. The front lines shifted back and forth, with neither side able to secure a decisive victory for years. Battles like Stalingrad, Kursk and Leningrad stand as grim reminders of the human cost of conflict. Stalingrad in particular became a symbol of Soviet resilience and determination, as the city withstood a brutal siege and eventually turned the tide against the German invaders. The Soviet people, led by the unwavering determination of Joseph Stalin, endured unimaginable hardships but ultimately played a pivotal role in defeating Nazi Germany. The resilience of the Soviet Union was a testament to the strength and spirit of its people, who fought not just for their country but for their very survival. Meanwhile, in occupied Europe, resistance movements sprung up, challenging Nazi rule through acts of sabotage, espionage, and armed rebellion. These movements were diverse, comprising people from all walks of life, united by a common goal: to resist and overthrow the oppressive Nazi regime. These brave men and women, often operating in secrecy and at great personal risk, played a vital role in undermining the Nazi war effort and maintaining hope in the darkest of times. Their acts of defiance, though sometimes small, collectively made a significant impact, disrupting supply lines, gathering intelligence, and inspiring